Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my weekly compendium for the week ending February 7th, 2022. Case file number 508, written by Kitty, Secrets of the Passing Blue Lighter. During the summer of 2019, I picked up my friend Shayna. We were driving down the road and I lit my cigarette with my blue lighter. I made it a point to tell her not to lose it if she uses it, because it's my only one. She said it was good and she didn't need it, and so I just put it in my lap and kept driving. We get down the road and I have to relight my cigarette. I reached down for my lighter in my lap and it was gone, absolutely nowhere to be found. She tore my car apart as I tried to pull into Winn-Dixie, which is where we were originally headed. I get parked, hop out, look at my seat, and everywhere, no lighter. Flash forward, we are coming back to the car after picking up what we needed, get buckled, start driving, get down the road, and that dang lighter is sitting in my lap. How it got there is beyond me, and she was absolutely stunned too. To this day, I cannot explain how that happened, where it went, or how it managed to make its way back into my lap. Case notes, file number 508. I've been wondering lately when reading DOP, or Disappearing Object Phenomenon, if these objects when they return are exactly the same as when they left. So in one story, the item returned was covered in slime. In another, the returned object was repaired, but then went on to be broken again, in exactly the same way it had been the first time. Like it was reset, not just from its out of phase with space, but time as well. So given that these objects appear to be affected sometimes, does this mean they're being interacted with by beings in a higher dimension when they go there? For these beings there, from their perception, are objects suddenly just phasing in at random points in space and time? To be honest, if that's the case, they kinda have the better end of the deal. Bonus file, written by Fair Grade 9115, Secrets of the Inverted Snow Prince. This happened when I was younger, around 8 or 9. I grew up in a reservation in eastern Maine. I lived with my mother and brother, who was younger. We lived in a 2-story multi-dwelling unit or public housing. Vast wooded area in my backyard, surrounded by deep woods, and wouldn't take much to get lost. But I always enjoyed adventuring and was very familiar with the territory. It was late winter, with about 4 to 5 inches of snow on the ground. I heard knocking on the front and back door at the same time, around 1 a.m. in the morning. I noticed it first, and then my mother got up and told my brother and I to stay in my room. She called the police and went downstairs to see if someone was at the door. We kept hearing the knocking, but as my mother got closer to the door, it suddenly stopped. No one she could visibly see outside the door, and police finally showed up. Lights lit up the front of our place. Neighbors came out to see what was going on, as we had 5 neighbors in our MDU. All of them said they didn't hear or see anyone. Police searched around the property to see if anyone was hiding or ran off, but they didn't find anything. A cruiser stayed in our parking lot for the majority of the night in case anyone comes around again. Sunrise came and the officer had left early in the morning. My mother and the next door neighbor went outside, I assumed to talk about what happened. Then she noticed footprints in the snow that went along the building leading to our front and back door all the way into the forest. But these footprints were strange. It's as if someone was wearing pointed boots, men's sizes between 10 to 12. The prints were inverted, as if the toes were facing each other, not at an angle either, directly facing each other in a straight line. The creepiest part about them was the steps of the footprints moved side to side. Toes were inverted and looked as if they jumped, like that side to side in a perfect straight line leading into the woods. My mother didn't say anything about them till later on in life when I was older, but I knew they were there. It was obvious. I know what you're thinking. Maybe someone was playing a prank or faked it. There were other footprints in the snow around the strange ones, but only around the building. I assumed the other footprints were made by the officers due to the fact they looked normal. But there were no other prints in the snow leading up to the tree line. I followed the prints into the woods. There were no other markings around them, perfectly inverted side to side, hops or steps in the snow, leading deeper and deeper into the forest. I got to the point where an uneasy feeling crept over me, like something was telling me to go back. But I knew where the prints were leading. As I said, I was very familiar with the area. It eventually would have led into a marsh or bog area. I got chilled by that thought for some reason and turned back. I never said anything to my mother about it till later on. I never heard or encountered anything like it ever since. If anyone has any thoughts or ideas what it could have been, I would greatly appreciate it. Case file number 509, written by Little Corn and Beans, Secrets of the Sixth Electric Sense. Something kind of strange happened to me a few years ago. I was living in an apartment townhouse with 2 other roommates. Both roommates were gone for a couple of days because it was Thanksgiving and they were spending it with family, each to their respective hometowns. I had the house to myself for 3 or 4 days. On the second night alone, I decided to make myself some macaroni in the kitchen around 1 a.m. So I'm stirring the noodles in the pot, and out of nowhere, I become very, very terrified and fearful. I felt something and some kind of fear being watched, and I can't explain what it was. I looked over my shoulder almost to expect someone standing there, but there was nothing. I was trying to calm myself down because there was nothing there, but I could not shake this absolute terror and fear. I felt it climaxing and rising up in me. It was rising, and the hair stood on my arms and neck, and I felt close to complete panic. And then, pop, all the lights went out. It was pitch black, total darkness, and the stove turned off, and I became so terrified that I ran out of the kitchen door with no shoes or coat. I ran out into the parking lot, and I felt like I was in a horror movie. There wasn't anywhere for me to go. I didn't know my neighbors, and it's 1 a.m. My feet were freezing though, as it was November. And after some time, I didn't know what to do but just calm down in the parking lot. I couldn't just not go back to my home. So eventually, I just got brave and went back in. I found my phone and used it as a light. I called someone and told them how scared I was, but nothing could really be done. They didn't live near me. I eventually went to sleep and woke up to the lights working again and soggy noodles on the stove. Just really freaked me out that my hair stood up, and I had a panic attack before the breaker seemed to switch or whatever happened with the electricity. Could be nothing, I guess, but it seems strange that I felt absolute terror like that. Like another sense came to me where I felt extremely unsafe. Case file number 510, written by Raymond Vanzetti, Secrets of the Disappearing Credit Card. After getting off work on Saturday, around 6 p.m., I went down to the garage to leave for the day. I go to my car and I realize that there is nobody in the garage. No cars or workers. Workers leave at 5 p.m. I head to the gate to pay and leave. I put my ticket in the machine and it takes it. Then I put the credit card to pay. The first time, it did not read the credit card, so I put it again. After 2 minutes of processing, the machine says, "Ticket jammed." My credit card got stuck in the machine. I called the security in the building, and after 30 or so minutes, they came to open the machine. The guy opens the machine and searches for 20 minutes trying to find the credit card. However, he can't. He can't find the credit card or the parking ticket there. He then tries his own credit card, and it works with no problems. He thinks that I'm trying to get free parking, so he tells me he's going to the camera to see what happened. I go with him to the security booth and we watch the video together. You can see that I inserted my credit card and the ticket in there. He calls a manager who has worked in the building for 20 years. He goes back to the machine to check for my credit card, but he still can't find it. He says that the machine is working fine. Been thinking about this for 4 hours now. What happened to my credit card? Can things just disappear? Case file number 511, written by Das Tortegot, Secrets of the Silver Car and the Tall Man. First, I will start by saying that what I am about to describe happened in the span of 20 seconds. I was taking out the trash outside when I saw a silver car parked right beside my house. The car looked quite expensive. I tried to ignore it, but then a man stepped out of the car. He was extremely tall. I'd say maybe up to 7 feet. I am 6'3" and he looked taller than me by a good margin. He was bald, wearing a suit with a black tie, and had sunglasses on. The moment the man stepped out of his car, he started walking towards me and smiled at me. I was going to go talk to him to see what he wanted. He looked like a nice guy, but then I immediately felt a strong gut feeling. It told me to run. It told me to get the hell away from him and run. I ran as fast as I could to the house and locked the front door. I quickly went to the other room to peek through the window, but I saw nothing outside. There was no silver car parked there, and the man couldn't possibly have escaped in such a short amount of time. I literally ran as fast as I could because I was in panic, so there's no way he escaped faster than me. Case file number 512, written by Brandon the DJ. Secrets of my Husky, gaining 100 IQ points. One day I was taking a shower at my flat. Everyone was gone and it was just me and my roommate's Husky. I was in my shower, just casually enjoying the warm water, and the dog started barking a ton. At first I assumed someone was probably at the door, so I got out and began to put a towel on, just in case someone was actually at the door. While I was doing so, the dog was barking more and more. But then, the barking changed into perfect English, and the dog was yelling these words: "I just want to be let outside, please let me out." I literally backed away from the bathroom door and exclaimed, "What the hell?" I ran outside the bathroom to see the dog barking with his paws up on the back door. He turned back and looked at me and started barking some more. I let him out and just sat there, utterly stunned. Case notes, file number 512. Dogs are incredible creatures, loyal, full of energy and joy. Some can be quite intelligent too, but this takes it to another level. The only mundane explanation I can think of is that instead of your roommate's dog suddenly and temporarily becoming his species' Isaac Newton, it was your own brain that tricked your senses, making you hear the Husky as saying real words when it was merely normal barking. Of course, truly hearing words spoken would not be normal at all in this context. I have never even heard of a disorder like that, so it's not likely. Still, what could this mean? An animal suddenly gaining speech would be extraordinary. Reminds me of that genius dog in Back to the Future. Einstein was his name, if I recall. Fitting. Perhaps your roommate's Husky will help solve a time paradox too, at some point. Bonus file. Written by Automatic Anxiety 739. Secrets of my childhood home in hell. Back in 2001, my parents bought some property to build my childhood home on the south side of Chicago. Some backstory on the property that we found out after the house was built was that the marsh/swamp on the property used to be a dumping ground for bodies from the Italian mafia in Chicago. The black tar that was in the swamp made it impossible to get out of, and the bodies just disappeared. Fast forward to when my family lived there, and we had a beautiful 3-bedroom house with a wonderful yard, a swing in the backyard, and a basement that my parents let us write our names all over, a huge highlight of our house as kids. In that basement, we also had a laundry room that was around the corner of the stairs, and some ballet mirrors leading to it. Ever since I was a kid, I dreaded having to go down to that basement and always felt like someone was watching me. It was never just a kid being scared of the basement ordeal. Something truly felt off. One day I was walking down the stairs of the basement, and out of the corner of my eye, looking through the mirror, a man stood staring directly at me. He was tall, with a flat cap and scrappy beard, plain as day. I tried to scream, but it felt like all the air was gone, just like in a dream. He started coming towards the stairs, and as quickly as I could, I sprinted up the stairs and slammed the door. As a child, I was a wonderfully perpetual liar, and knew no one would believe me, so I never said a word to anyone. A few weeks went by, and I tried to put the image of the man I saw out of my head, but after that, I never felt safe in the house. The scariest instance, though, was when I was grabbing something out of my parents' room and again felt someone staring at me. For fear of seeing the man again, I began to run out of the room. The only thing was, I couldn't move. I stood there like a statue, unable to do anything except cry. I felt a pressure on my chest, like someone was holding me back from moving forward. After what felt like an eternity of being frozen, I finally was able to let out a small cry, and my mother ran into the room and grabbed me. She had to yank me so hard out of that spot, as if I was a mouse stuck in a sticky trap. As we fled the room, the door slammed behind us, and my mom took me outside, where I felt I was finally able to breathe. After that, we never talked about the moment. Apart from my traumatizing encounter, my younger sister also seemed to be on edge in the house. She could never sleep alone and would frequently scream in the night. This will come into play later. Another thing to note was around the house, things would move locations. Doors would open randomly, and if we all left the house, it was in disarray when we returned, as if someone was partying there. My parents never said a word to us about anything that happened and carried on cleaning as if it was normal. My 3 sisters and I were from ages 9 to 5 at the time, so I'm sure nothing was going to be discussed. Things kept happening over the years, and I would frequently see the man staring through the windows as we came back to the house, around corners, and even sitting on a chair in our living room. Eventually though, we had to move due to my parents losing our house in the recession, but I never forgot about the house. After we got older, we all had dinner one night and reminisced about the old house. I brought up that moment where I was stuck in the bedroom and my mom's face turned white as she told me she saw a tall man with a flat cap and scrappy beard holding me there and did not want to frighten me at the time. As she described the man I saw, everyone's faces dropped. Apparently, we all had encounters with the man. My older sister would see him as she played with dolls in the basement, my dad in his garage, my mom with me, but the scariest story was from my younger sister. When she was a child, the man would visit the edge of her bed and stare directly over her, telling her, "Get out. If you don't go, I will kill your family. You're all going to die. I will kill you." Her screams every night were not from some childhood nightmare, but an actual nightmare we all seemed to be living in. She would wake up with scratches from the man that we just assumed were from her childhood eczema, but nope, he could touch her. To this day, we never bring up the old house or drive past the street where it sits. It still terrifies me today to think about all of our experiences in the house, and I will never ever go back. While it will always be the home I grew up in, I truly consider it a place in hell. Bonus file, written by a very living me. Secrets of what terrifies the dogs. We were staying at a Hogan Airbnb on the Navajo Nation close to Monument Valley, and there were several very friendly, calm dogs roaming around. My friends and I, one of whom is deathly afraid of dogs, had no problem being there with them or petting them. We had a gorgeous view of the Monument Valley right from our front door, and it was cold yet cozy. That night, I needed to use the bathroom and opened the door to the dogs going absolutely nuts. There is a difference between a dog barking at just whatever, a person walking by for example, and then there was this, a total fight or flight response. One of the dogs ran up to me looking anxious and glancing into the desert behind the Hogan. It came close, then walked back to look into the desert behind the Hogan. Its fur stood up and it suddenly looked more like a wolf and took off into the desert at full speed, growling and barking in a huge shadow that ran away from the dog. There aren't many huge animals in the area, some deer and horses, maybe cattle, but this was bigger. I didn't stick around long enough to check what it was. I was pretty shaken by what I saw. Found some fresh wolf/mountain lion prints and hoof prints, probably from a horse, outside the Hogan the next morning. The dog prints are significantly smaller. Our host said we might have seen a skinwalker. I'd like to believe it was a horse. It was dark anyhow, but the host didn't want to talk about it too much. The guides we met later on said the same thing, and kept it at that. Later that day, one friend suddenly fell ill on a tour of another Hogan, and almost fainted. That never happened before in her life. The guide said she probably had some bad spirits attached to her. She recovered quickly after stepping outside. I also believe I heard native chanting shortly after the incident. I had gotten a phone call around the same time, around 2:22 a.m. That would have put the Skinwalker experience at around 2:15 a.m. That's all. It was a really wonderful trip overall. I'd go again if I could. Case file number 513, written by Brandon the DJ. Secrets of an Extra Life from McDonald's. Back in high school, I had this friend. We will just call him Josh for the sake of the story. Josh and I were best friends, and we always joked about how weird stuff would always happen around us when we were together, such as lights flickering, random people wanting to talk to us, things disappearing and reappearing. You get the idea. Well, one night we went on a double date, and after we got home to my house, we decided to grab food from McDonald's. As we were walking out the door, I felt this really weird feeling. It was like déjà vu, but felt very eerie. As I stopped right before walking out, I saw a scene in my mind where I was driving in the car with my friend Josh, and we got into a horrific accident and died. I remember it vividly. He was driving his white Mustang. I was in the passenger seat, and we experienced a horrible car crash at an intersection about 3 minutes away, and we were both dead at the scene. What's weird is I had stopped for probably about 2 seconds, but it felt like I just experienced this whole scene for about 15 to 20 seconds. I snapped back to it, and then my friend Josh said, "Brandon the DJ, I just had the weirdest feeling. I think if we go to McDonald's, we're gonna get into a car crash. I just saw a vision of something where we died." What gets even stranger is he's not a very emotional person, but he was tearing up when he told me. We both slowly closed the door and walked back to the couch, and just sat down, and we just sat there in silence for a good 5 minutes, just looking off into the distance, not knowing what the hell just happened. Has anyone had an experience where you think you avoided your death, or saw your death? Case file number 514, written by Chad Kicks 704, Secrets of the Blue Orb over the Pond. My mom and stepdad lived in a house in the middle of 5 acres of land. There was a pond of a decent size next to our house, and the one window I had in my room looked straight out to it. I grew up in Charlotte and would visit my family in Rockford, Michigan as a kid until my stepdad died of brain cancer, and they sold the house in 2011. The weirdest thing I've experienced, which is very mild compared to what I've read here, but still would like an explanation for, happened one summer around 3 a.m. while visiting. I got to sleep with the dog for the night. My little bro and I would take turns when visiting. And one late night, around 3 a.m., our dog Duffy kept going to the foot of my bed next to my window and growling at something. I pulled him up to me a couple times, not thinking anything of it, but he kept going back to the foot of my bed and growling. Finally, I was awake enough to look, and there was a glowing orb floating maybe 10 feet above the center of the pond. I could see the moon in the sky much higher, and the tree line on the other side of the pond, orb completely unobstructed by them. I could also see the reflection of the glowing, floating orb in the middle of the pond. Anyway, I thought it was weird, but didn't think too much of it. Was wondering if anyone had any input or idea what the glowing orb of white light could be. Case notes, file number 514. So there are actually quite a few theories on what these blue orbs of light could be. There is a phenomenon called ball lightning, and it's as described. Sometimes electricity will somehow form into some sort of plasma ball, and it'll appear just like an orb. However, it won't be perfectly spherical, and it'll also make a noise. What you described doesn't sound like this. Instead, it sounds like the spheres that people report in their rooms that are silent and without deformity. Personally, I think that these are yet unformed echoes of people in the past who have died. I think that if you die, there's an imprint that you leave behind on the universe. Your essence, your consciousness, whatever you want to call it, doesn't fully transfer over. Even though I do believe in quantum immortality, I think that not 100% of you leaves. Maybe 99.99%, but that 0.01% that stays behind still matters and can still affect reality in this existence, even if the bulk of you isn't here anymore. The question on that is, the essence that remains behind, does it have a choice to? The you that switches over to another universe to inhabit another copy of yourself, you wouldn't be aware of any part of you left behind. But if it is still there, it would be interacting and acting in a way that would be similar to you. Sort of like if you tried to program your own personality into an avatar, something like that. So maybe these orbs are just yet to be manifested versions of echoes of people who died, I like to say. I don't know, that's just my theory. Case file number 515, written by Cafe Kona, Secrets of Two Absolutely Inhuman Men. This happened about 6 years ago, but has strongly stuck with me. The setting: Starbucks in a US college town off an incredibly major highway between noon and 3 p.m. I was running the drive-thru by myself, taking orders over the speaker and serving customers at the window. Business had slowed down for the afternoon, so I was able to work at a comfortable pace for once. I took a car's order, just 2 grande coffees, nothing remarkable. Just a perfectly normal and non-irritating interaction. Cool beans, yeah? The car pulled up to the window, and when I opened it to greet them, I got the absolute weirdest feeling. They were pleasant enough, not chatty, but not being short with me either. The 2 men in the car looked like the typical middle-aged white businessmen that come through my drive-thru all the time. Their faces were incredibly generic and nondescript. To my best friend and coworker over the headset, I said, "Hey, I swear, these guys at the window aren't human. They're like the most generic NPC-looking people I've ever seen. Like, I can't even describe them. They look so nothing." I wrung them out. "Go hand out their coffees and see if you're still laughing at me." She rolled her eyes, of course, and went to hand out the coffees. Afterward, she agreed that there was something seriously off about those 2 men. We couldn't quite pinpoint it. Aside from them and their car being so nondescript, we couldn't even describe them minutes later. They kind of reminded me of Men in Black, except they seemed to be functioning perfectly fine as humans. I would have thought it was just having a weird day if my friend, who misses no opportunity to roast me, hadn't seen them too and agreed with me that they didn't feel human. So is this a thing? I get pretty deep into supernatural rabbit holes and don't know what they could be or possible explanations besides boring looking guys gave me the heebie-jeebies. Creepy file number 5, written by Reckless Lovely, Secrets of the Mystical Store. I have no one I can comfortably talk to about this for answers, so I'm posting it here because I hope someone will take me seriously. Me and my friend, we'll call her Naomi, went to an antique store a few days ago, and as soon as we got inside, she said something felt off. She can't figure out what it is, but there's just a general feeling that something isn't right. Gut feelings aren't something I really believe in, so I just told her everything was probably fine and we continued into the store. Naomi kept looking over her shoulder the whole time, not in a frightened way, but more like she had her guard up and was on the lookout for anything that could go wrong. Whether that be a bookshelf falling over or someone having a heart attack. She says she's psychic for that kind of thing, but again, I'm a big skeptic. There is one thing I find strange though. I keep seeing someone out of the corner of my eye. I always notice them just a split second before they leave my line of sight, behind another shelf or around another corner. You know when you think you see shadows right at the edge of your vision, but nothing's there when you look? It was that exact sensation. But I know someone was standing there. It wasn't just my imagination. It wasn't necessarily threatening yet, but still a bit curious. Here's where things get weird. Naomi and I are pretty good at sticking together when we go to shops like that, but we occasionally do go off in different directions. Normally, we'll at least give each other a heads up if we're splitting off to different sections, but at some point I turned around and she was just gone. No warning or anything. Initially, I thought it wasn't a big deal because I figured she'd just turn up sometime. So I'm by myself in the back part of the store, and it's full of candles and astrology-themed stuff. I thought I was alone, but when I went to leave that section, there's some woman standing right behind me. Immediately, I just get a weird vibe from her, and was super uncomfortable. Like she was just standing there a little bit closer to me than a normal person would. I stepped out of the way because I thought she was trying to get past me, but she just got even closer. It put me on edge enough that I started to hold my keys between my knuckles. Before I could tell her to back off, I had the sensation that I was falling asleep. Everything in my brain just started going fuzzy, and it was getting harder to think. Next thing I know, I hear Naomi saying my name over and over, and I wake up, still standing in the exact same spot. The woman wasn't there anymore. I asked Naomi what happened, and she said she had been trying to get my attention for 2 minutes. Apparently, I had just been staring blankly ahead as if I was hypnotized or something. I remember none of those few minutes. It's all completely gone, like I was literally asleep, standing up with my eyes open. I asked if she'd seen the woman, and she just got this super serious look on her face and asked me, "Did she say anything to you?" I said I didn't hear her voice, but was also a bit unaware of everything for a few minutes, so I just said that I don't remember. Naomi took my hand and walked us straight out of the store, and she would not let me talk to her about it anymore. She was really freaked out, to the point where she even checked the backseat of her car before we got in, like she was making sure no one was hiding. She barely spoke the whole drive back. She dropped me off at home, and since then, we've only texted. But she will change the subject every time I try to bring up what happened in the store, and she'll do everything she can to talk me out of going back, like my life depends on it or something. I've been left without answers for this really weird encounter, and I needed to tell someone about it. If not for answers, then just for someone else to hear it and take me seriously. I know how all of it sounds, and I'm pretty sure most people in my life would think I'm crazy or something. I know I would assume my friend was crazy if they said the same thing to me. In terms of theories, I have nothing good. I don't think the woman drugged me, because I can't find anything online about any drug that just incapacitates a person for 2 or 3 minutes before instantly wearing off. When I regained awareness, it wasn't like a gradual thing. It was like Naomi flipped a light switch. I snapped back too. I don't think any drugs can do that without some other side effects. The other thing I thought of was that it would actually have been some sort of hypnosis, but I'm pretty sure that also doesn't make any sense. From what I can gather, it seems like someone has to consent to being hypnotized for it to work. You can't just go up to a random person and hypnotize them without warning. And maybe this is just me being cocky, but I feel like it'd be pretty difficult to hypnotize anyway. Just to be clear, I don't take any drugs and I don't drink. I don't even use over-the-counter cold medicine when I feel sick. I typically just let everything heal by itself. Also, I have no history of mental illness besides what some people in my family think is an undiagnosed case of OCD. Case file number 516, written by Ben SK2346, Secrets of Quantum Immortality with my sister. In the summer of 2017, around 2 hours after my grandfather passed away, me and my sister were in a horrific car accident. It was a bit past midnight. We were on our way to my grandpa's house. I was behind the wheel and driving moderately fast. I was supposed to make a U-turn, but the brakes failed and we hit the guardrail. The front of the car was demolished and both of us were badly injured. I believe I lost consciousness for a few seconds, and when I woke up again, I looked at her and saw blood all over her face and realized that she too had lost consciousness. She was slowly coming to when I squeezed myself out of the window and went to the other side to get her out of the car. Her door was stuck just like mine, so I couldn't get her out. People started to gather around and called 911. The firefighters came and removed the door and finally brought her out of the car. When the ambulance was taking us to the hospital, I was having the longest déjà vu of my entire life. I knew which hospital we were going to, even though nobody told me. I knew how the interior of the hospital looked, somewhere I've never been before. I even knew the name of the doctor who was supposed to stitch me up, someone that I've never met before. It's weird because as soon as me and my sister were alone and could talk to each other, she told me about how she feels like she's been there before and was feeling déjà vu the whole time. It might seem normal for people who've suffered head trauma to experience these kinds of things and read too much into something that isn't actually there, but it's a lot more weird than it seems at first glance. I believe that both of us died on that timeline, but for some reason our consciousness switched into a parallel version of ourselves in another universe. And the constant feeling of déjà vu was because of our consciousness setting into the bodies of our alternate selves, with the original consciousnesses still present, which caused the feeling of experiencing everything twice. Now here's something truly bizarre. There was a song called Zalem by Mohsen Shavosi, which our mom loved and listened to almost every day. Even when my mom didn't play it, my older brother would. It was kind of a signature song in our home back in 2005 to 2007 and 8. So a few months after the crash, I was having a conversation with one of my co-eds about music. She was, without a doubt, the #1 fan of Mohsen Shavosi, to the point that we used to call her Shavosist. She was talking about her favorite Shavosi song, and I just remembered all those years of listening to Zalem. I said, "Yeah, he's a good singer. My mom loved Zalem. She used to play it on repeat until someone became sick of hearing it." She frowned, looking confused, and asked me about the song that I just mentioned. She said that he doesn't have a song named Zalem. I thought maybe I got the name wrong, so I sang the chorus. She shook her head and again said it's not Shavoshi's song. She named Farok as a singer. I swore that the song I used to listen to was Shavoshi. His voice is unmistakable. There's no way I'd be wrong about that. So she asked me to send her the song. Obviously, I didn't have our old computer in which the song was stored on, and I couldn't find our old Shavoshi mix CD. So I googled it, and no matter how much I looked, I couldn't find it online. I even searched for the lyrics and only found the song Zalem by Farok. I thought maybe it's the same song and I was wrong all along, so I downloaded and listened to it. But the song by Farok can't be more different from what I remember. Sure, it was the same lyrics, but the melody and genre of it is completely different. So I asked my mom about it, and guess what? She never heard of it, nor did my brother, who gave us the song in the first place. They had no recollection of that song, whether it's Shavoshi or Farok. On the other hand, my sister remembers it. I sang her the chorus, and she said it was Shavoshi's song, absolutely. Somehow, she and I have memories about a song which doesn't even exist in this world. I don't know why or even how it's possible, but I sincerely believe that we moved through the dimensions when we were both unconscious after the crash. I've heard stories that happened to other people which are similar to our experience. I don't want to get into it too much on this one, but I think it has something to do with my grandpa's death. Maybe we were supposed to die that night, but his death caused an event which led us to moving onto another universe where we didn't die. Case file number 517, written by KSJ15831. Secrets of going insane over a blue pen. I would like to preface this by saying I've never believed anything I read on the sub. In fact, I never believed in glitches, Mandela effects, or such. Today, however, something happened, and it is driving me insane. This happened on the 12th of January, Wednesday, which is the day I'm posting this. 2 days ago, I bought some pens on my way to college. 4 pens, blue, red, and 2 black pens, sealed inside a package. Once I got to class, I tore the package open and messily pulled out a single blue pen. I remember I distinctly tore open the package. Since it made so much noise, my classmates looked at me. After the class was finished, I tossed the pen and the package into my backpack separately because the package was basically useless after I tore it open. Now come today, and I went to the same class. When I tried to find my pen, I found it back inside the package. The package was completely sealed. I was beyond shook. I turned it over and over, trying to find the hole that I had torn in just 2 days ago. None existed. There was no way to get the blue pen out, not to mention how it couldn't have so neatly gotten back into the package by itself to begin with. This has been driving me crazy. I know I'm not crazy because the thing that I wrote with my blue pen still existed in my notebook. It couldn't have been a different pen since I literally did not own a single pen for 2 years, ever since most schools went online. And there were just those 4 pens in my backpack. I even turned my backpack inside out, trying to see if there was another blue pen, but nope, just 1 pen. The pen broke out of the package twice. I'm going insane. I've been obsessing over this. I can't stop thinking about how crazy it is. I live alone. No one could have placed those pens in my backpack. Creepy file number 6, written by Anonymous. Secrets of tap, tap, tap. This happened last summer. It was around 11 p.m. and I was sitting at my dining table typing away on my final paper for the semester. Behind me sits my kitchen and a big window that overlooks my backyard. This backyard was surrounded completely by a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence, and inside that fence was a little garden I'd been working hard on. Lots of cute flowers and a little pond. I was proud of it and would leave the blinds open so I could take in all my hard work during the day. I was caught up in my paper that was due by midnight, and since it was late, the dogs were snoozing away nearby. My concentration was broken by a very sudden, very loud, and very deliberate. I froze completely, and it dawned on me I'd never closed my blinds. All my interior lights were on, and we know how that works. Whoever was tapping could see me perfectly, while I could barely see outside at all. Weirdly and inconveniently enough, my dogs, who normally bark at the slightest noise, were still sound asleep. It took me about 5 minutes to muster the slightest ounce of courage to turn my head just enough to see the window in my periphery, only to hear a loud crunch and another couple of taps, just a little bit lighter. Nope, to hell with that, no need to look. The last thing I needed was to see a face pressed up against that window. To my left was a door to the carport, which led to the backyard. The handle was within arm's reach, and I wouldn't have to look at the window to open it. I called my dogs, and they jumped up as soon as I turned the knob. I guess the watcher realized what I did. About 30 seconds passed, and I heard a couple more crunches, then a very loud thud. If you've ever heard a vinyl fence being smacked against, it's a bit distinctive, and I knew they'd jumped it. My dogs finally went nuts, and I ran to the window near the thud. Lights off and blinds closed there, thankfully. I caught a quick glimpse of a leg disappearing behind the corner of my neighbor's house. I stayed up until dawn with my metal baseball bat and one of those giant, sharp grill forks. With the fence and dogs, I always felt safe. How they got back there so quietly, I'll never know. I've lived here my whole life and never had anything happen, so this has shaken me. Whoever that was wanted me to know they were there and definitely wanted my attention. I've since installed multiple cameras and motion lights all around the perimeter of my house. It's been quiet since. I feel better, but that illusion of safety has all but disappeared. Case notes, creepy file number 6. So what strikes me as strange in this ordeal is that your dogs didn't wake up and alert you before this threatening man was at your window. Typically, dogs have such strong senses of smell that they know someone foreign is approaching before we could even hear them. Maybe they indeed were just that sound asleep. Maybe they did something very active that day, but I'm not so sure. It may not be anything supernatural. Maybe it was just some creepy guy that wanted to look into a stranger's house. But it does strike me in that vibe of abnormal. I'm glad you're safe. I do wonder what the security cameras would have picked up had they already have been installed when this happened. Hopefully, nothing more than a creepy man.